Testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Mic check, mic check. Testing, testing, mic check, mic check. Hello? What?
Subcommittee will come to order. We meet today pursuant to notice to mark up 3 bipartisan measures. As your offices have been notified, it is the intent of the Chair to consider and block the following items which were previously provided to members and are in your folders. First, House Resolution 339, expressing the sense of the House of Representatives regarding the 25th anniversary of the democracy of Mongolia. The Salmon Amendment 104 in the nature of a substitute to H.Res. 339, and the Salmon Second Degree Amendment 105 to Amendment 104. We also have House Resolution 343, expressing concern regarding persistent and credible reports of systematic state-sanctioned organ harvesting from non-consenting prisoners of conscience in the People's Republic of China, including from large members of Falun Gong practitioners and members of other religious and ethnic minority groups. With that, we'll be voting on the Connolly Amendment number 66 in the nature of a substitute to H-Res 343. And finally, House Resolution 374, recognizing the 50th anniversary of the Singaporean independence and reaffirming Singapore's close partnership with the United States. And with that, Salmon Amendment 103 in the nature of a substitute to H-Res 374. And without objection, these items are considered as read and will be considered en bloc. I now recognize members to speak on these items, beginning with myself and the ranking member. Today we consider three resolutions. Resolution 339 on Mongolia's 25 years of democracy, Resolution 343 on the People's Republic of China, state-sanctioned organ harvesting, and Resolution 374 reaffirming Singapore's partnership with the United States. First, we turn to H-Res 339, sponsored by Representative Joe Pitts from Pennsylvania. This resolution recognizes Mongolia's success as a young democracy and free market system, which has emerged from the fall of the Soviet Union. Mongolia evolved from a one-party communist state to a democracy upon the introduction of its constitution in 1992. Since then, Mongolia has held 6 presidential and parliamentary elections, each deemed generally free and fair by the State Department. The United States strongly supports democracy promotion around the globe and will continue to work with Mongolia to promote peace, stability, and other good things in the region. This legislation encourages the U.S. government to expand academic, cultural, and people-to-people partnerships with Mongolia to ensure this beacon of democracy in Asia endures. I offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute that gives the recognition to Mongolia's Open Government Initiative and substantial UN peacekeeping efforts. I have an additional amendment to offer that recognizes Mongolia's eligibility for the Millennium Challenge Corporation fiscal year 2015 compact assistance. I urge my colleagues to support both of these amendments and the underlying resolution. Next, I'd like to express my support for the consideration of H-Res 343, condemning Chinese state-sanctioned forced organ harvesting. This legislation, sponsored by our colleague, Representative Ileana Ros-Lehtinen of Florida, has the support of 152 co-sponsors. Reports allege that tens of thousands of Chinese detainees, largely associated with the Falun Gong, fell victim to non-consensual organ harvesting while still alive. H-Res 343 encourages China to end the practice of organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience and call on the Department of State to provide an analysis of these activities. Representative Jerry Connolly from Virginia will offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute that provides further information on the practice of organ harvesting in China, and I encourage my colleagues to support this measure as well. Finally, we consider H-Res 374, which reaffirms the United States' important economic and security partnership with Singapore. I'd like to recognize and welcome the attendance of Mr. Denny Heck of Washington. Mr. Heck, along with Mr. Bradley Byrne of Alabama, introduced this resolution and are the co-chairs of the Congressional Singapore Caucus. Since the Republic of Singapore gained independence in 1965, this city-state has been a critical regional partner of the United States. The United States-Singapore economic relationship has been vibrant, especially since the U.S.-Singapore Free Trade Agreement was signed in 2004, the first bilateral trade agreement between the United States and an Asian country. In 2014, Singapore was the United States' 18th largest trading partner, and we're pleased that Singapore is part of the 12-nation Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement. The United States welcomes its broadening military partnership with Singapore based on the 1990 Memorandum of Understanding for a Continued Security Presence and the 2015 Defense Cooperation Agreement. This resolution also underscores Singapore's commitment to peaceful resolution of disputes such as those in the South China Sea. As the United States works to implement the rebalance to Asia, Singapore will undoubtedly play an incredibly important partner in that process. Given the storied history of the United States-Singapore relationship, It's important to recognize this relationship, especially on the 50th anniversary of bilateral diplomatic relations. I offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute that reflects additional U.S.-Singapore cooperative efforts. In the face of deteriorating security environment in Asia Pacific, reaffirming this partnership is critical. This resolution is an important part of this affirmation. I encourage my colleagues to support the measure. These measures will be considered en bloc, and I urge the subcommittee's support for all three measures. I now recognize the ranking member for his comment on today's procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the bipartisan approach we're taking. There are two, I think, non-controversial, completely non-controversial bills. The first deals with Mongolia. I'll, of course, support the bill and your amendment to it as well. Democracy has been thriving in Mongolia for 25 years. This bill recognizes the 25th anniversary of that democracy, recommends the U.S. government expand academic, cultural, and other people-to-people partnerships between Mongolia and the United States. It advocates and urges Mongolia to further develop democratic institutions, promote transparency, accountability, and community engagement. This is a country with a truly amazing history, and I join you in supporting the bill. The other non-controversial bill deals with Singapore. I commend Mr. Heck for being here and for authoring this resolution. Singapore was established in its independence 50 years ago. The country's history began in a unique way, being expelled from Malaysia in August 1965. After that separation, the fledgling nation had to become self-sufficient, faced problems including mass unemployment, housing shortages, lack of land, and a lack of virtually all natural resources. Not only does this resolution commemorate the 50th anniversary of Singapore's independence, but it highlights the strong bilateral cooperation between the United States and Singapore. And I might add that Singapore is one of the very few countries in Asia where we run a trade surplus. And I look forward to looking at that trade relationship and seeing if we can't replicate it with others in Asia. China's, turning to the third resolution, dealing with the Falun Gong, China's human rights record is abysmal. Its treatment of religion and those who wish to practice religion is abysmal. It appears that Beijing simply fears anything it does not control. If they were providing open government in which all could participate, they would have far less to fear. We should specifically condemn China's treatment of Falun Gong members who have faced perhaps more discrimination and more retribution and more mistreatment than any other religion in China, though there are many others that could argue that they too are subject to that abuse. But there are parts of this resolution that do give me pause, in particular the second full whereas clause on page 3 of the amendment in the nature of a substitute, which says, whereas researcher and journalist Ethan Gutman estimates that approximately 65,000 Falun Gong adherents, and this is a strange phrase, may have been, and then it goes on to say, killed for their organs from 2000 to 2008. I can't find anyone in the human rights community, any of the established human rights organizations, to lend their credibility to this as even a reasonable estimate. It also gives me pause to say that a researcher determines that a certain number may have been killed, and the chairman points out that he believes that people's organs were harvested when they were alive. This clause talks about them being killed. It is, I think this resolution would go, would be preferable if it simply deleted this whereas clause, or, and I may offer this as an amendment in the full committee, I will not offer an amendment here, if we said, okay, it is indeed true that Ethan Gutman has this estimate, but others concerned with human rights, those who are focused on human rights in Asia and in China, do not subscribe to that estimate. Either way, I think that this resolution can be improved. And it is factually true that Ethan Gutman does put out this estimate. But when you cite the estimate in a whereas clause in a resolution, you're not only making a statement of fact, you are citing it and giving it credibility. And I think that at a maximum, we should delete this. As a minimum, we should qualify it by indicating that others who are very concerned with human rights in China don't embrace this. Again, that would be something for the full committee and not the subcommittee. And I will yield to the chairman.
Yeah, I'm not particularly married to that whereas clause, and if that's something that is causing the gentleman some concern, would entertain a motion for that clause being stricken or modified.
I'll make that motion. I'll make the motion that we simply delete that whereas clause, beginning with the word whereas and ending with the word targeted, as it appears on as the second full whereas clause on page 3 of the Connolly Amendment in nature of a substitute. That is my motion.
And I would be very, very supportive of that. Well, without objection, then,
Thank you.
there is no objection on the panel, then I'm going to go ahead and strike that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
We aim to please.
Yeah, let's vote.
All right, any,
Well, we got to commend Mr. Hecht.
we did.
But
Yeah.
we didn't do it enough. You
Okay.
can never do it enough.
We could make it into a song. No, I'm very, very pleased that you're here and trying to observe the rules of the committee as far as speaking. But Mr. Heck, this wouldn't have come to the floor, this Singapore resolution, without your great work, and we very, very much appreciate it. And thanks for being here today. Mr. Rohrbacher.
Thank you very much, and I rise in support of these three pieces of legislation. First and foremost, let us remember that Mongolia, the people there have been courageous in their implementation of an entirely new economic system at a time when they are in a relatively isolated area of the world. There was great hardship there in Mongolia while they were transitioning out of the Soviet economy. And it is much to the credit of the people of Mongolia that they were able to stick it out, and they actually have maintained a democratic government and were able to move forward, and now I think are exemplary in the way they have conducted their own society. Again, starting way behind the curve 25 years ago. We have next is Singapore, and let us note this about Singapore. Singapore, too, also started with a much of a handicap. If you take a look at Singapore, maybe I could give my speech. Thanks a lot, pardon me. The people of Singapore had less land, fewer sources, and more people than China. And so you have what appears to be a country with a lot of liabilities and not many assets, but they have turned that country in a 50-year period. Singapore has become exemplary to the world of a society that works. And it was my honor to meet President Lee in Singapore, the first President Lee. I haven't met his son yet, but President Lee was a dramatic leader who made that country work, as I say, with few resources, lots of people. Unlike China, they never, for example, went to a one-child policy, yet they established a country in which, because of the prosperity level of their people, you had basically a stable population without having to have the draconian and anti-freedom policies that we saw in China, which the Chinese have just recently backed off on. Lastly, about our friends in the Falun Gong and China, talking about China, the Falun Gong while well, I agree with Brad, with my good friend, Mr. Sherman, that yes, maybe there isn't an exact reading on this. You can't get an exact reading from a dictatorship, from a group of gangsters. You cannot get an exact reading of how many people they have murdered in order to sell their body parts. Yeah, the only way we can express it is may, but we can say for the record, and I put it on the record now, there have been many investigations into this, especially by parliamentarians from Canada, who I've spoken to personally, who went into China, documented how many prisoners, Falun Gong prisoners, were taken to certain prisons and how many didn't come out. And the fact that those very same prisons were the prisons in which body parts were being sold to people from the West and other places. So although, yeah, you can't say, no, there may be body parts being sold there because they're not going to show you this, but when you have a dictatorship, this is just about as proven as it gets. The Falun Gong, by the way, are people who have no violent threat to anybody. Falun Gong are people who believe in meditation and yoga and are peaceful people. The fact that the Chinese Communist leadership still feels compelled to murder the Falun Gong, to try to destroy it as an option for the Chinese people, speaks a lot about the nature of the Chinese regime today. It is an evil regime that continues to put people in jail, murder them, and sell their body parts because they're part of a pacifist organization. So all of this, I think we should make sure we heed in these three pieces of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership.
Mr. Shabbat, did you have an opening
Yes,
comment?
very brief, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I want to commend you and the ranking member for bringing all three of these bills before the committee today, and I'll speak just briefly on H.R. 343, a bill that expresses concern, as my colleague indicated, in regards to China's state-sanctioned harvesting of organs from prisoners, particularly members of the Falun Gong and other religious and ethnic minorities. And I know I've met with many Falun Gong practitioners from my district in past years who have brought me all kinds of horrific stories about what they either experienced themselves in China or others that they know of or relatives that are still there. And it's unbelievable that this happens in the 21st century. I brought similar legislation before this committee when I was chair, and I'm pleased to see that the subcommittee is raising awareness of the issue by bringing this matter before the subcommittee again. China's organ harvesting, it's deplorable, and it saddens me to think again that in 2016 this heinous practice is still occurring. China continues to deny that organs are taken from prisoners without consent, but there's still no independent verification of the state-sponsored organ transplant system, and it's our duty as the leader of the free world to continue to call on China to end this disgraceful barbarism, and yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Do any other members on the panel seek any recognition for opening statements? If not, then the question occurs on adopting the items, the items as amended en bloc. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the en bloc items are approved. Without objection, HRES 339, HRES 343, and HRES 374 as amended will be reported favorably to the full committee, and the staff is directed to make any technical and conforming changes. I'd like to thank all members and staff for the assistance and cooperation that went into today's markup, and would like now to move into the hearing side of the, oh, I'm sorry, I'll adjourn the markup, and I will go ahead and convene the next meeting, which is a hearing dealing with human rights in China. And I'll allow the panelists time to take the dais. Well, we just really classed up the place, bringing these two. That's great. The subcommittee will come to order.